This is Dance Studio 411, where we answer your real-life questions about your toughest studio life predicaments. Parent problems, teacher turnover, student challenges, policy dilemmas, and so much more. Let's talk about what's keeping you awake at night and what you can do about it. Here are your hosts, Suzanne Blake Garrity and Jill Tyrone.
Welcome to this episode of the Dance Studio 411 podcast. I'm Jill Tyrone, and I am here with my special guest, Joe Naftal from Naftal Creative. Joe, we have such a fun podcast to talk about today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jill. Always a pleasure to be on the podcast.
Well, thanks for being here. So you can always tell everybody more about you and better than I can explain all of the amazing things that you do. So Joe, for our listeners who are not familiar with you, please give a great introduction and tell us all the amazing things that you're up to today.
Absolutely. So first and foremost, I'm a second generation dance studio owner. My family has Dance Connection, which is on Long Island, New York, about an hour outside of New York City where I live. And I grew up in the studio business. The studio actually predates me. My mom was in business for about 5 years before I was born. And then I was literally born right into the madness of studio life. And through growing up, I tried to find ways to improve the business, find better ways for us to do things, find ways for us to innovate, find ways for us to use technology to make things even better. And then in my adult life, I pivoted to figuring out how we could do that for the entire studio industry. And that's what I do with Naftal Creative. Our family of brands includes Check In Pointe, Dance Studio Savvy, Penny Prima, all good things to really help studio owners from across the world run profitable, great, stress-free businesses using all of these different tools and resources.
And that's exactly why you're here today. We're going to talk about these resources and these great things that you've developed specifically around holiday shows. So we are talking today about how you can level up your holiday shows, make them less stressful, and really give your students and your families a great opportunity to shine on stage. So, Joe, we talked to our dancestudioowner.com members a little bit more in depth about this, but let's talk about kind of setting the stage, all the pre-planning that goes into a show. How do we make that a little less stressful?
Absolutely. So it really starts with, figuring out a calendar and a to-do list and getting that organized in some sort of system. And that system's up to you. That can be anything from Excel and Google Sheets up to a project management software like Trello or Monday.com or Asana, whatever it might be. But getting every task you need to do, even the things that you're thinking, duh, I know I need to book the venue, duh, I know I need to put tickets on sale. Putting all of that in there so that you have it all at a glance, at a bird's eye view of what needs to get done for that holiday show. Something with holiday shows, I think that's challenging is that with everything that we have going on in September, with getting enrollment up, getting marketing done, getting our class schedule done, we start off the year running and it already feels like we're behind schedule with our holiday show right out the gate. So keeping ourselves as organized as possible is so important. And then once we finish that to-do list, next year it's so much easier because we can just duplicate that list, clear out the status on it, and we're ready to go, knowing what tasks need to be done. And we can then be maybe ahead of schedule instead of feeling like we're behind.
Great. And the things that you're talking about today are for people who are already doing holiday shows, or if you're thinking about doing a holiday show. These are great tips because we all know, even if you've been running a show for years and years and years, there are ways that you can improve for sure. And if you haven't thought about doing a holiday show, Joe, one thing that we really want to focus on too in today's episode is why holiday show in general, first and foremost. I mean, maybe we should have started there when I started recording the podcast.
No, I think that's a great point. Holiday shows are so important because it allows us the opportunity to have more than one performance per year. And that's important for a number of reasons. It's important for our dance families. It's important educationally, especially if we have like a young preschooler. It makes it so that the June recital isn't the first time that they're going on stage. It gives us an opportunity to warm up to that, to pull the Band-Aid off a little bit so that they're ready and they can kind of build up that confidence and that experience before we get to maybe the big spring show. So it's important for that. And it's also important for our businesses. For so many dance studios, the spring performance might be the thing that takes the studio from being in the red to being in the black, from being an unprofitable business to being a profitable business. So we know the impact that performances have on these businesses. So, that kind of extrapolates to, let's add more performances in if we want our businesses to be more profitable.
And that leads me right in. We'll touch on this a little bit, but talking about budgeting and profits, Joe, you are a big proponent of budgeting and looking at your numbers in spreadsheets. And I am too. We mentioned in the training that we did how the numbers really will help you make better decisions. So can we just touch on that real briefly for our listeners today?
Absolutely. So I think, holiday shows sometimes get put on the back burner compared to our spring shows. And then in a budgeting and business sense, they do as well. We don't think about them in the same way that we think about our spring shows. And it's so important that we do. It's important that we take some of those same revenue generators, maybe like program ads or kisses for the cast, whatever it might be, and we bring those into our other performances too, because if they work in the spring, they're going to work in the winter as well. And it's important that we really have a budget set up for these performances in a spreadsheet. We might shy away from spreadsheets as studio owners, but it really is so important, as you said. It's important that we add profit in as a line item in that budget if we want to make sure that we have profit at the end of it. We can't just hope and pray that we're going to have money left over at the end. We need to start off from the beginning, just like we need to add in a line item for our lighting or for our trophies or for our venue. We need to add in another thing and say, oh, we have to pay the studio. Oh, we have to pay me. Oh, we have to pay the profit. And think about that just as another expense. Because when we start doing it that way, again, it makes those other decisions so much easier. You don't have to sit there and stress about what should the ticket price be. Once you know how much the show is going to cost you and what your anticipated profit is, you can easily divide that down by the number of tickets you're going to sell or the number of dancers you have. And that right there is your recital fee. That right there is your ticket price. You don't have to, worry, should it be an $18 or a $20 ticket? Let the numbers make that decision for you. And then your parents will be happy, you'll be happy, everyone will be happy at the end because you know those numbers ahead of time.
Happy families, happy dancers. That's what we're looking for. And happy staff and faculty as well. So speaking of happy families, Joe, we talk a lot about communication. It's really difficult to get those families and those parents to read emails these days. You have some great tips. Let's just touch on a couple of communication helpers that we can provide to our listeners.
Absolutely. So, one just comes from acceptance. I think of getting parents to read emails. You kind of have to go through those, 7 stages of grief. First, you have to get to acceptance that they're not going to read every email, that you're not going to reach every single parent. And then once you get through that level of acceptance, you can start to figure out, okay, what techniques and resources can we put in place to help improve that? And one of those is message segmentation, making sure that we're delivering the right message to the right audience. Making sure that the email about, what the preschoolers are going to be doing while they're waiting backstage, that doesn't have to go to our advanced dancers and vice versa. The information maybe about the big opening number dress rehearsal, that doesn't need to go to our preschoolers. Making sure that we just deliver the right message to the right person at the right time is so important. And the ability to personalize that using our email marketing software or our studio management software. A parent that just sees, tech rehearsal information, they might skip over that, with the 75 other emails they're reading while on the school pickup line. But if it says, Jane's ballet winter recital, they go, oh, that has to do with Jane. That has to do with me. Immediately, it's going to, snap for them. I need to read this email. It's important. So figuring out ways we can personalize that so that it really signals to that parent that it's important.
I love that. And we can do that through our studio software, through some of the automated, mailings, email systems that we're using and platforms. So Joe, this is gold right here, everything we've talked about. But now too, with Check In Pointe, you have some solutions to really help tame the chaos from check-in all the way through checkout and beyond. So again, let's touch on really your brainchild and the thing that you have developed to really help us through planning a great holiday show and actually then putting it on stage.
Yeah, so Check In Pointe was launched in 2019. I started working on it in 2017, not as a commercial venture. Initially, it was really born out of necessity of something that we needed for our own studio. And it started out really solving our issue of checking in and checking out dancers. As our studio grew, we started off 35 years ago with 75 students. We now have over 750 students in multiple locations. And the thing that didn't scale with the studio was the amount of time we had to check dancers in backstage before the show. We still only had 25, 30 minutes to get everyone in backstage. Now we're trying to, check in 200, 300 dancers per show. And we certainly didn't want them coming any earlier. We certainly didn't want those preschoolers to have to come an hour before the show because we know that our time with them is limited to get them to still perform their best on stage. So we needed a way that everyone could be in sync, checking dancers in as quickly as possible, and that they had access to the information they needed when they needed it. Things like medical information, things like they need to have their inhaler backstage. Any of that important information that we needed our check-in and backstage staff to know, we wanted them to have that information in real time when they needed it. And of course, we wanted to make sure that backstage was safe and secure for all of our dancers as we continued to bring all of these dancers and children backstage into these large performing arts centers with tons of hallways and corridors and back areas. We wanted to make sure that we had peace of mind for our parents who knew that their dancers were going to be safe and well taken care of backstage, and that we had the security to back that up as well, making sure that dancers got back to the correct caregiver at the end of the show, and that we weren't dealing with any of those sticky family situations and divorce situations that do come up time and time again. So that was where we really started out, was really in solving the check-in and check-out. And then from there, we've sort of blossomed into a fully featured performance management platform, again, focusing on making sure everyone has access to that backstage information when they need it. So everything from our stage management software to our backstage show status screens that show who's on stage, who's coming up next, to sharing your information with your tech staff and your technicians and your designers, really focusing on making sure everyone has information when they need it, whether the bow goes on the left side of the head or the right side of the head, whether they start behind a curtain, in front of a curtain in a blackout, or they enter from the wings. All of that information is so important, and we want to make sure that we don't gatekeep that information, that we share it with whoever needs that information at the right time so that they can play their part.
That's so good because it's so needed. And it really helps the organization and the organization of the show, but more importantly, too, it really helps you shine as a studio to your families. And what a great retention strategy. If you can deliver that safe, organized show, they're going to keep coming back for more, Joe.
Absolutely.
Great. So as we close this great podcast out with all this information, don't forget, we're going to post all the resources that you're hearing and the links to Check In Pointe. We have great holiday options for costumes at Revolution, so we'll post that link as well. We really want your shows to succeed, and this is a great opportunity to A, put a holiday show in your lineup if you're not already doing it, or B, enhance the shows that you're currently already doing. And Joe, as always, you're just such a great wealth of knowledge, and we want to make sure that people feel free to reach out. And I know you have a demo, right, for Check In Pointe. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that, how they can get more, and then we'll close it out for today.
Absolutely. So a great way to get started is to head over to www.checkinpointe.com, click on the free demo link, and you can get access for you and your staff to test it out, see how it works for your studio. It unlocks all of the features so you can play around and see how it would work for your studio business. And then from there, you can sign up. If you have any questions, you can reach out to our support team. We're always really excited to talk about all things performance. So talk to us about how you import your dancers from your studio management software. Talk to us about what unique challenges you have for your recitals, or talk to us about what color background you should have for your certain costume. We love talking about all things performance. So we're happy to help in any way we can.
Yeah, because with your theater experience and your background in lighting design, this is the place to go, everybody. So thanks, Joe, for your time and talent. As always, this is great information, and we really appreciate you. Thank you.
Of course, I'll talk to you guys next time.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Dance Studio 411. Visit us online at dancestudio411.com for more great resources and to submit a question for a future episode. Our number one goal is to help you build a successful dance studio business and keep your passion for dance alive.